Watch, and that is being run volunteer-based. That's a good start, but things like that need to be expanded on. We'll talk about the SRO program in greater detail, but things that are like an SRO are important to the community. The other part is the data that drives patrol in a healthy organization is not being used here. So you need to balance what's happening out there. So if you have a traffic problem in one area, is there some programming that needs to go with it? If you discover through data there's shoplifting or thefts in a certain area, but you want to create a program through the police to address that, if you're not using the data, you can't understand what strategies need to be developed. And then, of course, you need the voice of the public to come on board. So here's some of the things that we'd like to get involved in and create that plan. The other part is, over time, probably not in the real near future, but as this department starts to re-engineer how it works, that it would be a really good idea to have a citizen-based police academy where members of the public can come here and learn about policing from your patrol force, understand what they do, and understand what detectives do. You know, oftentimes people will watch a TV program. There's all these really cool tools that they have on the police shows on TV, but we don't have all of those here. So it's really, I think, an interesting process for folks in the community to learn how they actually process a crime scene, or what some of the laws and regulations are, or what some of the data is within the police department. So it's just a way to create a good and transparent police organization and engage the community with taking a look at what happens on a day-to-day basis. And again, there's the part of the data, this part about science-based programming, but what it really comes down to is how the department can become closer with the community in a meaningful way. So the PIO, we're putting this up here, not that we don't want the department to create a PIO, but we want it to use the strategies of a PIO because the department itself does not effectively communicate outwardly to the public. So there has to be a process in place to, whether it be if the detective is the PIO for anything with specific cases, the patrol lieutenant is going to be a PIO for this, and another person is going to be a PIO for community program. That's appropriate. It tells the media, it tells the community, if we have questions, here's who we can go to. And then there's also the process of ensuring that the right information gets released to the public. And when there's not a process in place, it becomes everyone giving their side of the story to people that want to listen. And sometimes people that talk outside of the walls of an organization might not have all the information. So it's a really good checks and balance for the organization to set up a process of how that information gets released to the media and how it's used. And there's important information that the police department has to share with the community, and this just puts a process in place so that it's done in the same manner all the time. So the K9 we put in there because there was a lot of community reaction to the K9. There was a lot of folks that we interviewed that wanted to bring a K9 back to Hooksett. And what we looked at is that the size of the organization, the cost of the K9, would not really be the best use of the resources of Hooksett for right now. Now, we know that this folks will say, well, a grant will pay for the dog. That's the smallest piece of maintaining a K9 unit. There's training, there's care, there's making sure you have the specialized car for the K9. So when we look at all of the things that the department needs, we wouldn't make it a priority. The other part that we're very conscious of is that when there's a K9 in the area, all the other departments tend to want to use it. And right now, you're not a large enough department that can support that amount of mutual aid. Maybe somewhere down the road, it might be something that a region wants to investigate the support of, but right now, we're not suggesting that that come back to Hooksett. So the SRO, and not just this job description, but like the policies and procedures, most of your job descriptions here are out of date and not in line with what people are actually doing. So the job description, the needs of the community, and some other things that are evolving with the person that is working with the schools sort of aren't aligned here. One of the things that we're suggesting is to revamp the SRO strategy. And when you have the younger grades here, your high school students go to another municipality. So there's other things that that SRO can be doing in addition to the schools. So maybe it becomes a community services officer or community liaison, whatever the title might be, but there's things at the schools that that individual would be doing, like bullying prevention or information for the students, at the same time sort of coordinating some of the other community-based activities that need to go on. And of course, school is only part of the year, and so that officer would be able to work on the community engagement piece year-round. We also think that there needs to be a formalized connection between the SRO here and the SROs in Manchester for your students that are going to those schools. It's a really good way for them to keep up on what's happening with the kids once they transition to the higher grades. So one of the things, of course, that we look at is how do you get some of the things accomplished that we're suggesting when we know that, you know, economy is tight and budget folks are going to be looking at what are you doing with your budget? Are you getting the maximum use out of your resources? And so it could be that you would go outside for a retired, seasoned person that has experience as an SRO, as a DARE officer, someone that understands some facilities planning, someone that has information in their background about active shooter, either by going through the training or helping schools with their response plans for that, someone that knows a little bit about emergency planning, because there's an expectation from the federal government that you have your emergency response plans for your schools, and police have a role in that. So there's some other areas that that person could cover. And oftentimes there's grant funding out for some of the other ancillary things, the Secure Our Schools Act. If not that you're looking for cameras in your school, but if someone wanted cameras in the school or security enhancements or to have a vulnerability assessment done in the school, not just for the big homeland security piece, but to make sure that from a crime prevention perspective, things like shrubbery is appropriate and lighting is appropriate. So those are all things that a community services officer could take on, not just for your schools, but for other businesses or other municipal buildings as well. So the facilities here, I mean, you have a fairly new building. It's adequate for a police organization of this size. You have divided space, you have detective space, you have patrol space, you have the appropriate facilities in general. One of the things that comes to question is the storage. And one of the things we quite honestly can't answer for you right now is how much storage there actually is. Because there's a lot of things stored here that either should be taken out of this building and stored someplace else, because it's sort of cold storage at this point, the things that you just have to hang on to for an extended period of time, or storing of equipment that you're never going to use and you need to, you know, sell off or somehow get rid of that equipment that might free up some of the storage space that's here. The record-keeping function with the facilities, this is a lot of storage of records in different spots. So it's consolidated, so it could be, you know, getting some offsite storage or getting a pod type storage. And there's been talk of, you know, secure area outside if there's larger items that need to be stored. Low cost improvements, the things that, you know, you can think about and integrate each piece. So the calls for services, as I mentioned, we took a look at all the data that was in your computer-aided dispatch and record management system. And what we saw is that the calls and responses were dropping off. But what is more alarming is that the rate of some of the activity, such as arrests, such as citations, has gone down at a higher rate than the calls for services. We do understand that the staffing levels have changed as well, but the staffing levels have not changed in such a way that equal the decrease. There's a lot of factors that come into that, but what the department has to do is look at it, extract the data for the planning purposes, use the CAD RMS system to sort of drive the decision making, use hotspots and mapping for deployment, and give the officers the tools to police the community in a way that keeps everybody safe. So when we talk about that citations have decreased, we're not asking officers to go out and write a ticket for everybody, but we also know that the traffic volumes here haven't changed, that speeding and those types of issues are still occurring. And it's good community service for a police officer to point out that speeding is unsafe. So it's not about writing tickets, it's about stopping folks and informing them of their safety, that it's a good idea to change behavior. So one of the early slides, I think we skipped over, but I will talk about it for you. So one of the things about communication within the department is there needs to be a concerted effort for administration and the management of the department to get out and be with the officers. We want a chain of command, but we need a visible presence by your leadership and the administration. So whether it's attending roll call, going on a patrol, or just sort of informally moving throughout the organization, that's healthy for the organization. It's not bypassing a chain of command. It's being involved and observing what's happening within the organization. So what we've presented to the commission, and this is a snapshot of all the pieces that we've looked at, it's the high-level findings and recommendations. We've suggested to the commission that they implement a system of a management transition team for the organization. We have briefed the department. They're well aware of what is before them. And what we've said to the commission is, you asked us to come here and study your organization. You really have to start with foundational building blocks here. It's not just a little movement here or a little change here. It's a lot of real substantive change that has to occur in order for the organization to move forward. One of the things that you're also aware of is some of the senior leadership have moved on to other careers. Some have retired. And so this, while we're asking you to streamline your organization, you also don't have a lot of folks that are here that have the time or the resources to be able to change all the things that need to be changed while still doing their day-to-day jobs. What we have sort of found at this point is that folks seem really optimistic about some of the suggestions that we've made, but they also understand that there's a really big task ahead of them. And for all of you to know is that one of the big things that we in the commission talked about and we implemented was a process where the department would get information before the community got information. So last night we did a briefing at 11 o'clock at night for the two shifts. Last night we did another briefing this afternoon. It was important for all of us collectively to give that message. And we also sat with Captain Daigle as well and gave him a briefing. And I think that alone shows you that there's good faith effort to change the culture of the organization and to be progressive and inclusive. Again, there's a lot of recommendations in here, a lot of them that maybe while not expected from the community members or that they're sort of internally known of some of the things that need to happen. There's, still we're talking about your employees, we're talking about the members of this organization. And again, while we've said that there's a lot of things wrong and a lot of things that need to be fixed, we do not want you to lose faith in the officers, the support staff, and the administration. You have people that are trying really hard to do good things for your community. They just need to be given the tools to do that. So if there's one message that I give all of you, is still have faith in the organization.
Thank you. I think at this point, if folks have questions, would you please pass around those index cards? And if folks have questions, Kim is going to answer them. Rick or Alan will answer them depending on what the question is. But we do ask that you write down your questions. This is not going to be a back and forth discussion. It's basically going to be just for the questions that